Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's presentation, the Harris County Transportation Planning Series from the Harris County Engineering Department. This is the third of 4 meetings, and we welcome all of our participants and those in the general public tonight. We're going to have some opening remarks from Commissioner Garcia and then a presentation about the Thoroughfare Plan. We will then have ample time for question and answer, and attendees can put in questions. We'll let you know how to do that. And we hope to be finished by 7 p.m. this evening. So with that, we do want to begin this evening by welcoming Harris County Precinct 2, Commissioner Adrian Garcia, for our opening remarks. Commissioner.
Thank you, Chris, and good evening, everybody. Buenas noches a todos. Bienvenidos a esta conversación. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. This conversation is critically important to the future of our community. I, in particular, want to give thanks to the Harris County Department of Engineering for hosting tonight's event because it allows us to engage the public we serve so that you can provide us input so that we can make all of the work that we do as relevant to you as possible. So this is about Vision Zero. It's also obviously about the multimodal thoroughfare plan. But Vision Zero is, in my opinion, one of the most important guiding principles of this plan. And effectively, it means that we want to make sure that all lives matter and that we are building infrastructure that allows us to keep people as safe as possible, and it encourages people to use other modes of transportation like hike and bike trails. And so it is, for me, having been a police officer most of my adult life, I have never enjoyed being at a traffic accident where someone who was walking or someone was riding a bike. I hate seeing the ghost bikes, by the way. So those accidents, to me, are always avoidable. They're always preventable. And they could have been preventable had we committed ourselves to Vision Zero early on. And so with that, it is important that you give us your input because we've got a lot of details to work through. But with your participation, you can help us give life to a effective and healthy plan. It'll ensure us that the details and the concepts that are important to you will be included in the multimodal thoroughfare plan. And this is what I'm hoping that you will help us do this evening by participating and actively discussing tonight's plan. And anybody who knows me knows that I am a big, huge supporter of our walkers, our runners, our bikers, and everyone else in between. In fact, I try to get out and ride the trails myself as often as I can. If my knees will stay healthy, I will run them every once in a while. But right now, I'm enjoying riding a bike, and I hope that you are as well. But not only is getting out in the community and exercising or using your trails as your form of transportation, it's good for every aspect of our being, our mind, our body, our soul. But obviously, it gives us healthier and more options, healthier options and more options on how to get around our great community. And so now I want to show you something that we're working on at the precinct level. My team has been working on 40 miles of hike and bike trail lanes. Now, if you look at this closely, this is in the southeast area of my precinct. But this is not the only area that we're doing it, but this is one of the areas where we have a massive amount of trails collected. 40 miles will soon be available to everyone in the community. And as I mentioned, this is not the only part of the precinct that we're doing. We're doing it throughout. We are taking input from folks like you on our hike and bike trail master plan. And so if you have an opportunity to weigh in on that, you're welcome to do so. But this particular plan is exciting for me because if you'll see the dark green area of this map, it is the Armand Bayou Conservancy. It's a magnificent and peaceful place that we have in the precinct. And this trail is running right through there and alongside it. I want to make sure that you know that these are the things that we're working on, not to forget to mention the Independence Trail that will be there to the left of the screen. And then the yellow trails indicate the runner trails, the walker trails. And then the dark orange is where our bikers will be welcomed and will have this available to them. And so we are assembling this infrastructure so that we can do our part in Precinct 2 to encourage Vision Zero and keep people safe as they get around the community and ideally use it as their form, your form of transportation. But the multimodal plan, and thank you for this. Oh, before you take the screen away, I do want to tell you that one conversation that my staff and I have been having is what to call this. What do we call this trail? This 40 miles is pretty magnificent accumulation of walking and biking trails. But if you'll take a look at the orange lines, the lower part looks a little bit like the big, or the Little Dipper or the Big Dipper. I can't remember which one turns which way. But one of the things that I hope that you'll give my office input on as relates to the trails that we're working on, and this one in particular, is what would be a cool name to give this? Is it the Southeast Harris County Hike Way, Hike and Bike Way? Is it the Southeast Precinct 2 Expressway, biking, walking expressway? Help us come up with a cool name so that it will bring attraction to our community, encourage people to come experience Precinct 2. Thank you for sharing this. But as I want to make sure everybody knows, the multimodal plan will include and does include roadways, freeways, sidewalks, bike lanes, railroads, high-speed rail that will soon be coming, as well as transit improvements. Precinct 2 is one of the most interesting areas of Harris County because we're almost entirely outside of the metro service area. So I've been working with the Harris Transit system to build the Harris Rides program for my area, since Metro doesn't serve it as it does other parts of the area. There's some history to that. But nonetheless, these are all part of the details that we'll be focusing on tonight. And again, I want to thank you for your help and feedback to make this a meaningful conversation and ensure that our multimodal thoroughfare plan.
He's been given the opportunity to give input. He gave input to the original list. We do know overwork.
Uh-oh, there you go. And so to ensure that we have good input and feedback from everyone to ensure that this multimodal thoroughfare plan is as complete and thoughtful as possible. And so again, I thank you for your time. And so again, Chris, and to Harris County Engineering Department, thank you all for allowing me to be a part of tonight's conversation. I'm glad I had the opportunity because this is important to me. It's important to the work that I'm doing. It's important to the charge that I've given my staff. But our work is only as good as the reflection it has with the values and perspectives of the community. And so again, I'm grateful that everyone is participating tonight, and I look forward to seeing the work that comes out of tonight's conversation. Thank you again.
Commissioner, thank you so much for these opening remarks. We really appreciate being here tonight. Thank you for your time.
Likewise, thank you.
So we'd like to let everyone know that Spanish interpretation is available this evening throughout the entire presentation. If you locate the interpretation icon at the bottom right of your screen, looks like a globe, and select your language preference, either English or Spanish. After you select that, you also need to select mute original audio to avoid hearing both languages at the same time. Give a couple of moments for everybody to find that. Once again, go to the bottom of your screen, move your mouse to the interpretation icon at the bottom right, and you'll select which language you would like to hear tonight's presentation in, either English or Spanish. And then you can select mute original audio, and you won't hear both at the same time. So for everyone to be able to ask questions during tonight's meeting, we'd like you to use the Q&A feature also at the bottom of your screen. You can send in answers at any time during tonight's presentation, and they'll be answered during the Q&A period at the end of this presentation meeting. If your question wasn't answered during the meeting, a project team member is going to contact you by email and answer your question then. You can also email your questions directly to harrisctp@eng.hctx.net. The questions sent to that email will be answered after tonight's public meeting. So, to begin this evening, let me introduce myself. I'm Christopher Brown, and I am the practice area leader for Planning and Visioning and Vice President at EHRA Engineering. We're an 84-year-old civil engineering firm based right here in Houston, and we are pleased to have been selected to work with Harris County on this multimodal thoroughfare plan. Our team is made up of both urban and transportation planners, engineers, and mapping specialists. I'm going to introduce some of our team members later during the question and answers. But for now, I'll simply tell you that each of us here tonight have been professionals in this industry for about 30 years each, working alongside Harris County and the cities within the county. We bring a wealth of experience to this planning effort. And this is important because this is a comprehensive effort. This is a plan for county-wide transportation needs. So we've got to improve connectivity and plan for future growth at the same time. It's a very unique study that's being undertaken. We call it multimodal because we're not just looking at roads for cars and trucks, but also for new expanded mass transit, bikeways, and pedestrian routes as well. These are things that the commissioner just mentioned, and this is key to what this multimodal transportation plan is. So the idea is to plan for future development that we all know is coming by evaluating the current thoroughfare alignments set forth by the City of Houston, for instance. The Houston-Galveston Area Council has transportation plans, and the surrounding counties and cities such as Pearland in Galveston County or Sugar Land in Fort Bend County. We're doing this to make sure that what we've planned previously and what we're now going to recommend is going to satisfy the future transportation needs of our entire community and all the surrounding communities. We'll be recommending new street classifications that speak to the kind of use that each alignment sees. In other words, we want to make sure that residential streets look and function uniquely from commercial and industrial streets. And while we're planning for the future in undeveloped areas, we must also protect existing communities, provide for new ways that residential neighborhoods can easily connect to parks and green belts, while enhancing access for emergency services, which sometimes has difficulty with direct access in many parts of the county. In short, we want to put the right road in the right place. We're working with each of the county precinct offices as well as the county engineering office to create this plan. And each precinct administers their own thoroughfare alignments and maintains any roads, sidewalks, or trails within that precinct boundary. You'll see on this map that precincts are rather large to study in total. So there's the 4 precincts in Harris County. In the dark blue color is Commissioner Garcia's precinct, where he just indicated a lot of those 40 miles of trails that are going to get added. But the next slide, you're going to see that we had to break these 4 precincts down into study areas. We made 15 of them that are defined by geographic boundaries like major roadways, lakes, and bayous. And each study area was further divided into panels, over 100 of them, as a matter of fact, so our team could look at the county in bite-sized pieces. Within each of these study areas, there are dozens of alignments that have been studied, and so far that total is just under 2,000 different transportation segments that we have analyzed to this point. To perform our analysis and our planning, we need to study really a lot of information. This is just a fraction of the data sources that we've combined in our study maps. And you can see from this partial list that we've paid close attention to new information about flooding gathered post-Harvey. We're looking at existing railroad crossings in the hopes of minimizing the number of locations where roads and rail lines intersect. We're also looking at truck routes to improve access to the Port of Houston and place heavy truck traffic on routes that protect neighborhoods from the effects of such traffic. We want to see where public transportation nodes can be placed or enhanced so that residential areas can connect to business centers, shopping, and recreation more easily. And we want to augment that recent focus that we've seen on the trails and bikes along our bayous, looking for connection opportunities that have little or no interaction between vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists. That's what Vision Zero is really all about. We've identified a number of numerous alignments which cross over existing landfills and sand pits and even through floodplains and right on the top of creeks. These need to be rerouted on these transportation plans to be much more effective. These kinds of changes are going to save money in the long run. And again, it goes back to our mantra, put the right road in the right place. So what does a thoroughfare plan actually look like? And what is it and why is it needed? This slide is just a snippet of the overall county and shows the thoroughfare alignments on top of an aerial photograph. You also see some of the light blue colors are the floodplain around some of the bayous. The red lines indicate what we call a major thoroughfare. This would be a road that would be, say, over 4 lanes wide, for instance. The blue lines that you may see on the map, those would be what we call a collector road. Those are smaller from a major thoroughfare, something that takes you off of the major road and takes your traffic into close to your neighborhoods. And then you see the purple lines that kind of are on top of all of the developed areas. Those would be your local roads. Each of these has a different character, a different classification. They're all designed to hold a different number of cars, a different amount of traffic. And each of them has an appropriate way of handling other uses like pedestrians or bicycle activity. So overall, the thoroughfare plan is a way to blend all of these things into one comprehensive map so that we can decide where's the best place to spend money, where is the appropriate location based on the needs of that community at that time, and how can we program for the future so that money is spent in the right place on upgrades to existing roads or creation of new roads. And we don't want to look at it in a microcosm. We want to look at the whole county all at one time. And all of the areas that we're looking at are outside of anything inside of the Houston or any other city limits. So everything that we are studying and that we're asking for feedback on through this process has to do with road alignments, streets, pedestrian trails and such that are in the county itself outside of the cities. And on the next slide, you're going to zoom in and look at one of the urban areas in detail, a little bit more detail. And again, you can see some of the red alignments, those would be major thoroughfares. And we want to minimize the number of times you see the blue going east to west across the screen. We want to minimize the number of times we cross that bayou. Why would you build more bridges? They're very expensive to build. They also are prone to flooding. We have to make sure that these roads are still passable in emergency situations to get people out of these communities in such situations, but also to provide for emergency services to get to communities effectively. And we all know from Harvey that that is becoming more and more difficult. So we need to plan roads in the right place once again, and being inside a floodplain is not the right place to put a road. Again, the purple lines that you see on there are going to be roads that are inside of individual subdivisions. We want to identify those. Previously, those were really not been part of a transportation plan or a thoroughfare plan. Those roads were kind of looked over. Everyone thought, well, once you're inside the community, why do you need to define how you get around? Perhaps there's new trails that we need to add. There are neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks everywhere. Maybe there are places that you can't get easily on foot or on bicycle from the house to the school or to the park that's nearby. And so by identifying these purple alignments, we can see, well, maybe this is an opportunity to enhance existing streets with new sidewalks, something that connects to regional park systems, which is very important. The last thing I want to mention on this map, you see there's some green dots that are very bright in color, and they're in some brown areas right next to the bayou in the middle of this drawing. Those are areas that have already been identified as places where land needs to be purchased or has been purchased already due to Hurricane Harvey. These are locations where FEMA may have already bought properties because it doesn't make sense to continue to have those areas flooded year after year or storm after storm. And so we want to know where those areas are so that we don't program new roads to go into those areas. These are places that we probably should have not maybe developed next to the bayou in the first place. And so we're kind of having to fix what is, we now understand to be a problem. On the next slide, we're going to look at a part of the county that is undeveloped. There's an awful lot of area in Harris County that hasn't seen development yet, but as I said in the beginning, we know development is coming. And so by planning for thoroughfares in these locations, when development occurs, we will be already thinking or have thought about how those areas can connect to the overall area. On this particular part of the map, you'll see those represented as dots rather than solid lines. And these just represent alignments that we know that we're going to need in the future to allow people to get from point A to point B. But also, we will be analyzing that from the standpoint of what kind of road does that need to be? How many lanes does it need to be? Does it include a bike path? Is it going to be 4 lanes? Is it going to be divided with an attractive median in the middle? There are all kinds of choices that need to be made, and our entire study is helping the county engineers to inform decisions about how development can occur in the future so that we don't end up with traffic issues all over the place. One of the things that this study is meant to do is give a great amount of information to those people that make decisions about where the right place is to put the right road. That's really our mantra once again, and the whole point of doing all of this work. So in this part of the process, we have done an initial look at all of the thoroughfares, and as mentioned, over 2,000 of them throughout Harris County's the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Houston, the other cities that are inside of Harris County. Those are areas that are in somewhat of the city's control, but in actuality, the county is responsible for the maintenance of the roads that are in this area, which is why we're doing this study for the County Engineering Office. We want to receive public comments about all of these connectivity options. What's the right place to put this road? What kind of road? Should we add more trails? That kind of thing. That preliminary plan is going to go out to each of the county precincts. It'll be reviewed. There will be additional public meetings. And then we'll finalize that overall plan and present it to Harris County Engineering for their use. That should be happening sometime next year. And once we finish this, it will become a tool that everyone at the County Engineering Office will be able to use to the benefit of all the citizens of Harris County. The next meeting in this transportation series is going to deal with equity in transportation. It'll be held on December 8th. And the QR code in the middle of your screen now, you could scan that and it'll take you to the website that you can register for that meeting. Or you can just head there now or after this meeting. You can head to eng.htx.net/HarrisCTP. And you can register for that upcoming equity and transportation meeting. So now we're going to get started with our question and answers. We're going to be asking you to use the Q&A feature. You can submit your questions through the Q&A feature. And we need to turn on our questions screen so that I can read everything that's been coming in throughout our meeting. But you can also continue to put questions in during this Q&A session. And once again, if your question is not answered during this meeting, a project team member will email you after to answer your question, or you can send an email directly to the team at harrisctp@eng.hctx.net. And so as we're waiting for questions to come in, again, I want to say what a privilege this has been for EHRA Engineering to work with Harris County on this plan. It is very unusual that planners such as myself get to work on such a large-scale project. and to have such an influence on the future needs of our overall community. So again, we're still waiting for everyone's questions to come in, and they're also being translated as well if you put them in Spanish. I think what I'll do right now is go ahead and introduce my team members from EHRA Engineering, Truman Edminster, and also Patty Joyner. And this evening we also have from Harris County Engineering, we have John Blunt, our county engineer, Brian Brown, our project manager, as well as Alyssa Max, Lloyd Smith, and Brandon Hicks. So while we're still waiting for questions to come in, I'm wondering whether, John Blunt, would you like to make a few comments?
Yes, Chris, thank you. Sorry to get my mute off. You know, I think if you saw what Commissioner Garcia presented, the 40 miles of trails and the projects they have going on in just one portion of their precinct, how it's important to have that type activity integrated county-wide. So the initiatives that the commissioner is undertaking, we want to make sure they integrate with in all the initiatives that all the precincts take, that they can be found in one location and that everybody can see how they integrate with everything else that's going on, be it the city of Houston, the city of Webster, the city of Katy. This is really looking at a comprehensive approach to looking at how people and products and commodities move throughout the county. The Vision Zero is a very important component, but there's so many components. It's a very complex process. And previously, the vast majority of major thoroughfare control is actually given to the city of Houston because their extraterritorial jurisdiction covers the vast majority of Harris County. Yet, individuals in the county outside the city limits don't get to vote for the people that decide where the roads go. So we're taking a different approach and adopting our own major thoroughfare plan outside any city limits. So the commissioner's court can opine on where it needs to go and get input from the residents of the unincorporated areas of the county. And so we really appreciate this effort.
Great, thank you, John. So I'll be reading off some of the questions and we'll be asking team members to help me answer them, but also, again, the representatives that we have from Harris County tonight. So we have a question regarding Southeast Harris County, the Bay Area and Seabrook area. Will there be protected bike lanes on the road? The questioner asked if they would be like Dutch style. Currently there are no bike lanes, and the one that exists is unsafe with cars traveling at a high rate of speed. I think Commissioner Garcia mentioned in his remarks and his 40 miles of new trails what those bike paths might look like. And I believe that something in the quote-unquote Dutch style is an opportunity that could be used. Would someone from Harris County Engineering like to further that answer? Brian?
Yeah, hey, Chris, this is Brian Brown. Yeah, that's something I've been working on with Precinct 2 staff. Much of what was shown on the map is under development right now. Some of it is still yet to be designed. I think a larger portion of it would be in the form of side paths that are up on the curb level, but along the right-of-way. It won't be exactly what I understand the Dutch style to be, but the goal is the same, that it will be high comfort and useful for persons of all ages and ability levels. It was the precinct's goal.
Excellent. There's a question about how far this information is broken down. Does this go down to the community level? And yes, it very much so does. We have been studying vast amounts of Harris County, as you saw from just a portion of the maps. We are going down to the individual community level, and that will be shared in further public outreach meetings at the precinct levels, where people will be able to make comments. As we go through this process, the precincts will be responding to the maps that we have created, and then we will be making our study tools available to them so that they can respond back with their knowledge. One of the things that I always like to say as a planner when I go into communities, and I think this is important when you ask about the community level, is that we as planners and the staff even at Harris County, we're not experts in your community. We're experts in what we do for a living. So we have to listen to the community and understand what your needs are. And that's why the public involvement process is a component of all of these kind of studies. So this meeting tonight is really a primer, kind of a high-level view of what this entire thoroughfare study is about. And in the coming months, there will be more meetings that get down to the community level, and everyone will be able to talk about individual alignments of roads. Question, does the thoroughfare plan impact the typical standard type streets the county will be creating? Yes, indeed it does. Perhaps Truman would like to talk a little bit more about this. We are developing a wide range of what are called street sections, what each street might look like and the components that it would have, whether it's additional travel lanes, a lane specifically to like a fixed route, like a rail or a bus line, pedestrian and bicycle lanes on the side, those kind of things. You want to add a little bit to that, Truman?
Yes, thank you, Chris. We're looking at different alternatives that can be done based on what the adjacent land use that is existing today. In some areas, we need more, let's say, bus service, or we might need even parking in areas that we don't have any right now. We're going to need wider sidewalks, and in certain areas, we need a wider area in order to have the sidewalks and bike paths so we can get it out the travel ways. Sharing bicycle, I myself don't enjoy sharing a moving lane of traffic that's screaming down the road at 50 miles an hour being on a bicycle. In any event, we're looking at different options that way as far as the new roadways, as well as different alternatives on what we can do with existing roadways where we already have fixed right-of-way, and what are different options that we can go in to retrofit. Sometimes it's taking travel lanes away in order to reintroduce bike lanes and other parking type areas, or even mass transit of some sort.
There's several questions talking about transportation into the suburbs. Some people obviously from the LaPorte area have joined us, others from Kingwood maybe, based on these questions. So I'm going to group these together and just ask, what will we be doing to improve public transportation from the suburbs into downtown and other points of interest? This obviously speaks to the multimodal aspect of this plan. And yes, for sure, we do want to improve the connectivity between the suburbs. Our city and our county, in fact, our entire region is laid out kind of like a bicycle wheel where you have a lot of spokes that emanate from the center. And the farther you go away from that center, the harder it is to get to the spoke, because the distance between them keeps getting wider and wider. That's where there may be opportunities to have mass transit options. I saw John, you came on for a second. Did you have an answer you wanted to give to that question?
Well, yeah, we have the Metro Next plan, which is one component. Harris Transit, which is a Harris County Community Services branch of multimodal transportation, is another component. So we're really in this plan combining everything we have, identifying what's covered or what's planned and what needs to be done. Because these major thoroughfare plans these aren't 1, 2, or 4 year plans. These are long-term plans to make sure you get sufficient right-of-way so you can do the planning. Now, the precincts typically do what we would call short-term plans, where they're going to start putting in, as Commissioner Garcia showed. I'm sure he intends to build all those in the near future. That's the kind of work the precincts do. This incorporates their work, but looks at a longer plan and including all the other plans with Metro and the other transit authorities, because there isn't a comprehensive mass transit plan countywide, because Metro doesn't cover the entire county. So that we'll be looking at all that in this plan.
I think I'll toss this question maybe to Patty, if you'd like to answer what steps the county might be taking to ensure that all streets have sidewalks on both sides of the roads, along with crosswalks, making pedestrian access a priority. I think we have been looking at these plans as where is the best place to put pedestrian and bicycle traffic. It may not be on both sides. That could be the answer. But why don't you give some insight into how we're looking at that?
So one of the things I think we've all learned over the last 40 years that we've been working as planners is that we've seen over time, different administrations required sidewalks as a part of building a thoroughfare, and then the rules change for different reasons. And now I think we all realize that sidewalks being constructed as a part of the thoroughfare plan, whether it's major thoroughfares, minor collectors, major collectors, is important, and connecting our sidewalks to schools, neighborhoods, and places of employment. And so as Truman was explaining, and John was explaining, all of the designs and the street details are being worked out. That's why we need your input. We want to start it at the community level as well as at the major employment centers. So I think you'll see that the design criteria is going to be enhanced, and we'd like input also on right-of-way, because not everything can be fit into a 100-foot right-of-way. So we're looking at how to make thoroughfares with side paths, with local streets, major thoroughfares, collectors again, how we can create sidewalks and even retrofit sidewalks. So some of the data you'll start to see coming out of our community planning will show how to add some streets to the thoroughfare designation so they can be funded. And again, partnerships. As the commissioner said, they're important, and the county will be partnering with a lot of different agencies, including Metro, et cetera, as we go forward.
There's a couple of questions about what the maps will end up looking like. And I think I have a fellow transportation urban planner asking this question about particularly the colors on the maps and how they interface with the city's transportation plan. And will these plans supersede the plan that's done by the city? The answer is everything needs to work together as much as possible. One of the interesting things that as we have gathered all that data, and you saw the slide of just some of the data sources that we have been combining, is that not everyone speaks the same language as far as planning is concerned with roadways. Neighboring counties, neighboring cities that abut Harris and other jurisdictions don't all use the same colors and techniques. And so we are having to blend and come up with something that is readable, but also takes into account how we interface with something coming out of another jurisdiction. And so we're going to make our plan the most readable as possible, and what that final product will look like will be determined towards the end. But it'll also be very configurable, and so inside of the database that we're creating, we will be able to alter colors and such based on if we're trying to work with other neighboring jurisdictions, we can start to translate and in essence speak the same language about those roads.
Yeah, and Chris, this is John Blunt. I do want to say that this plan will not supersede the various cities' plans inside their city limits, but outside their city limits, this will be the plan that will be followed when developers develop and when we build roads within right-of-way. So that is the process we're moving forward with.
There's two questions here about will the typical sections include the width for future transit opportunities, and also sections including the width for sidewalks or shared use bike paths. Yes, absolutely. That is exactly what this thoroughfare plan is about. We have, to this point, studied basically what we call a connectivity map. We need to know where to go from here to there, and then we will begin to analyze along with the county precincts what the right mode of that transportation is. whether bikeways need to be added, whether something can be expanded inside of Metro. It was mentioned by the commissioner about the rail service that will be coming, high-speed rail coming into the area. All of these need to find a place to live. There's only so much land to be able to do all that in, and so that's why we do this plan. We have to figure out where the right place to put everything is, and so the typical sections that we will be proposing are going to include all modes of transportation that we can possibly think of and the right place that transportation should exist, so we can, once again, improve connectivity between neighborhoods and places that people need to go from their neighborhood, whether that's work or play. All of that needs to be thought of and will be included in the sections. So this is a question for the county engineers. Will the county address the issue of allowing new residential development to be constructed without sidewalks, especially on major thoroughfares where citizens are trying to access Metro? Anything within to answer part of the question, anything that's inside of a city limit is the responsibility of the city. But with new construction and new subdivisions, what is going to be the county's opinion of forcing the construction of sidewalks?
Yeah, we are working right now with the county attorney to verify we can do that. It's our position that if the study shows that sidewalks will be required, and I'm sure it will, that we want to make sure they're built. The thing we want to do is we want to make sure they're built continuously, for example, in new subdivisions. You know, there's been cases where certain cities will require the individual builders to build the sidewalks, and that's okay as long as they're contiguous. But we have cases where that's not the case. So we're looking into that. We think that's the way we will be moving, and we're having, of course, to work with our attorneys on that.
I think this question could be for Brian. Is there a way to code the streets that have been designated with bike lanes so that citizens will know where those streets are that have bike lanes and whether those are dedicated or shared? Sounds a lot like the bike plan, right? What options is the county going to have to be able to get that kind of information out to county residents?
Well, I certainly hope that a countywide bicycle plan is something that grows out of an effort like this and the other efforts that the county is currently undertaking. I think this is, what we were talking about earlier, the neighborhood street designation could be well used as a framework for comfortable bicycle connections in many parts of our county. So I do think that will be something that we'll be hoping to use this plan to build off of to achieve. I saw another thoughtful question about coding of streets for specific purposes related to park roads. And that's something else that I'd like to talk a little bit about, is that we are looking at particular road designs to serve our larger regional parks that attract users from all across the region and need to be somewhat accessible by vehicles for people to fully experience what those parks have to offer. But we don't want a typical thoroughfare style road, or perhaps we don't want a typical thoroughfare style road going through them. So we are trying to be sensitive to all of our context and all of the decisions that we make.
And this is maybe not a question, but a suggestion that should be studied about those hike and bike trails, that the use hours are from 7 a.m. to dusk. And those hours might be too restrictive for commuter use. We may need to think about that. And if we are genuine about having multimodal transportation and people have the ability to bike to work, especially at this time of the year, that 7 a.m. to dusk thing doesn't work for commuters on bicycles. And that kind of gets to another question that I see a little bit down the line here about what are the plans for lighting on the bike paths. And so I'm not sure we have answers for that other than to say that those are suggestions that we definitely need to include as we think about what these look like, is how they will be used and when they will be used.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that will be part of this as well. I just like to say, as a practicing professional in this region for many, many years, I'm so excited to see those questions asked, so proud of the growth that we're making as a region in terms of mobility and modal options. And I hope this plan represents all of that and more.
There's a question about public and or private partnerships being considered with other transit companies that could connect to Metro and extend that connectivity beyond the Metro system. I think that's a little bit out of the scope of our plan, but since we have some representatives from the county with us, perhaps one of y'all could answer what kind of transportation partners the county works with in expanding public transportation coverage.
Yeah, the Harris Transit Program is one that essentially does that. It takes what Metro provides and expands it. So if anybody's interested in that, you can just Google Harris Transit, and it has the contact information, and they would be happy to talk to you about that.
A couple of questions about truck. Did you have some more, Brian?
Well, just to expand a little bit on what John said, there's four partners or four entities that are operating transit in Harris County now. Metro is the largest, and of course the Harris County Transit Department, which John referenced. Our other two potential agencies to leverage would be the Brazos Transit District, which operates the Woodlands Express from Montgomery County into our employment centers from the north, as well as the Fort Bend Transit Authority to the south, again, which operates commuter service into our employment centers. So I'm hopeful that there will be future partnership opportunities with all of them to increase transit service across the county.
A couple of questions about freight traffic and truck traffic having to use the 610 loop to get in and out of the Port of Houston. The truck routes are something that we're going to have to take into account inside of this planning effort, and specifically with the precincts that have the most impact from the traffic that does go to the port. I know that Patty has some opinions about how that truck traffic should work with the precincts, and John, maybe you want to answer as well. But we do. Go ahead.
I want to say, the HGAC is undertaking a very extensive truck route study right now, and the information gained from there will be used in this study. This is the first time there's a very true comprehensive analysis of where the truck traffic starts, where it ends, where it passes through, from the port in the various areas, and they're in the initial phases of that, but they're gaining a lot of data. Once we have that data, that's what we can implement into this program.
And I just wanted to add, when you talk about freight and rail, one of the things that the plan is also going to be very aggressive at is identifying and helping the commissioners and the county look at all of the grade separations, all of the things that have to be looked at for continuity of our service to maintain our port, keep our trucks out of our neighborhoods, but also make sure that our freight rail, it can serve without, serve our community and grow, but not impact our vehicular routes. So you'll see the true multimodal sense here is even new graphics. I know one of the fellow planners was asking about graphics. There'll be different graphics on this plan that I think might be a standard that we could all use in other of our joining urban counties on how we look at grade separations and how we identify them and how we partner with the railroads to get them built.
Absolutely. I just want to mention we have about 10 minutes left until 7 p.m., but we want to make sure that we're answering all the questions possible. And so if questions continue to come in past the 7 o'clock program's time, we are going to stay with you and have the meeting run a little bit long. Question about timing, really. When will the public be able to give more input at the precinct level? That effort is being programmed right now, and I'm not sure, Brian, maybe you would be able to answer how we are going to implement additional public meetings in the coming months, what people can expect to be able to submit more comments at a more community level.
Yeah, sure. Chris, I mean, first of all, this is the first time that we're coming to the community with progress on this plan. This is not going to be the last. There will be other opportunities. We've kind of organized our stakeholder groups into roughly 3 different buckets. One is obviously the partner agencies within the county and the precincts. Or one group of stakeholders. We have another set of different jurisdictions, municipalities, and other governmental units that we want to coordinate with across the county. And then thirdly, and always most importantly, are community members at large. So we have a plan to touch each of those groups multiple times throughout this process. And I want everyone to understand that this process will never be complete. This will always continue to be updated based on new information that we give. We may wrap up an iteration or an update, but we will continue updating this as long as we continue to develop the mobility network in Harris County. So this is something that is very much at the beginning of this journey for us and for you all, we hope. And there will be other opportunities as we move forward to provide input into this. I don't have specific dates as to when each of those opportunities will be available, but I think it's safe to say that sometime early next calendar year, at least in the first quarter, we'll be coming back out to the general public for another show of our progress and another round of comment from everyone.
Great, thanks. I think, let me move down to a question that I believe Truman might be a good person to address. How are we incorporating transit into our typical sections? Something that, Truman, you have been studying and coming up with a large number of what our typical sections can look like and trying to study what opportunities we may have. But everything is constrained by how much land we have available to us, isn't that right?
Yes, it is. What we're finding has to do with when you want to put so many different modes, sometimes we don't have enough room to get it done. I call it the 10 pounds of apples with a 5-pound bag. In any event, what we do have looking at is under consideration is some wider rights of way on major thoroughfares in the appropriate locations that either bus or fixed rail BRT could be implemented in those areas. Obviously, that this is going to be in combination with our transit authorities in cooperation with Harris County, but we need to have the space accommodation such that we can have those different modes, and then also for people to safely access those modes of transit. But we are looking at different cross sections that would accommodate all those types of mass transit.
And John, on the county level, how can we talk to the public about the integration of these plans and the tie to funding that's available for them? There's basically questions about the financial constraints of adding things like local bus or BRT to existing roads, which we all know is expensive to do retrofits. When we're out in the green fields of the county, that's an easier thing to accomplish. But where we're already have development outside of a city limit, but you're still in a pretty dense area, what kind of financial issues is the county having to deal with, and how might those be addressed in the future?
Well, yeah, you're certainly right. It's always more expensive to go back and retrofit something in after the area's been built out. And that's really the whole purpose of a major thoroughfare plan, is to make sure we have an idea of what we want before it's built in the greenfield areas. Not that this won't affect the entire unincorporated Harris County, but it will. But the important area is where we get right-of-way dedications to make sure we have enough right-of-way and we have a plan for what we're going to do with that in the future. Because that makes it much less expensive to develop that in the future for whatever we need, mass transit, hike and bike trails, things of that nature. We're going to have to go back and look at, the areas that are already built out. We are doing a county transportation plan, and this is all part of the county transportation plan. And I will tell you, we just completed an entire assessment of all the, for example, all the streets in Harris County. We've done a pavement condition index assessment of them. And we're also looking at the locations of sidewalks and the conditions of sidewalks. So we have a lot more data now, than we did a year from now, significant more data. So we're going to be using that in looking forward on how funding is allocated.
I think maybe this question, perhaps Brian or maybe Brandon would be able to address in the future. The question is really about how we can densify areas of the county. The question actually asks about the city, but since this is a county meeting, perhaps the question maybe is better, how are we going to look at these alignments from the right-of-way standpoint and then to the adjacent development that's on them, so that you're addressing parking requirements, the ability to put buildings closer maybe to the street so that commuters don't have to walk across a parking lot. We have that more of an urban kind of street section into the county. What will we be doing about the requirements for building lines, in essence, I think if I translate that, so that we can bring more density to the areas of the county?
Yeah, Chris. So once again, this will only apply to areas outside cities. We are looking at establishing different setbacks based on where, typically it's a 25-foot setback on a major thoroughfare, 20-foot setback in residential subdivision. We're looking at changing that depending on the development type. We're looking at the potential of allowing alleys, which are typically not built, so that you don't have all these front-loaded garages on the streets where you then don't have any parking for visitors. All these are issues. And I will tell you, we are working with the city of Houston on that. I was on a 2-hour phone call today with them about the very issue, that they're realizing that it's a huge problem, that we have to have a more pedestrian-friendly process in setbacks and land development and lot sizes, and we need to ensure that we have denser development.
So the question about, are we addressing intersection planning? They gave some examples in other jurisdictions of how those are planned. And the answer is an unequivocal yes, we are looking at intersections. As a matter of fact, as a combination of the data that we have gathered, we also have what are called the average daily traffic volumes for many of the roads. This information is available from multiple jurisdictions and also from the Houston Galveston Area Council. And combining all of that data, we will be able to look at intersections and specifically flag those intersections as places where additional turning lanes may need to be constructed in order to improve traffic flow. So intersection planning is precisely something that will be included as well. All of the Vision Zero work that is being done will have to be integrated as well, so that those intersections are planned appropriately for all modes of transportation. A question about, I think there was a comment made about the available, or that there is an HGAC truck traffic study asking if there was a web link to that already. I think we can try and post that perhaps. If there is an actual link, I will get some people in the back to kind of work on that. How will high-speed rail affect this proposed plan, and what effect or impact will it have on the county major thoroughfare plan? Yes, we absolutely must respond to the plan for the high-speed rail, its locations, its stations, the endpoints. It's going to be a fantastic addition to the overall mobility throughout our area. And so that plan is, or the location of that, the route, its stops, which are few and far between, so that it can be high speed. You don't want to have a whole bunch of stops. So we will absolutely be including that into our work. How does the construction of new flood detention facilities affect the overall plans? So this is something that I believe we have taken a very serious look at across the entire county is once again putting the right road in the right place. And it just doesn't make any sense to continue to put roads in areas that we know are going to flood. There's no point in having an impassable road. We have to think about the elevation of that road. Is it blocking water from getting out of a subdivision, or is something being built that might be causing a detrimental effect? Any new flood facilities, any lands that are currently owned by Harris County Flood Control or plans that they have to expand facilities are noted on the map in a color for those properties so that we can analyze where an alignment needs to either be changed to go around such facilities or revised in a way that that road is handling the right kind of traffic. I think Truman maybe mentioned a little earlier the idea of park roads, or perhaps it was Brian. A park road could be a facility that is small enough that access is provided to a county park facility, but is done in a way that the traffic is slower so that it doesn't impact users of the park, is narrower in travel lanes so that it doesn't allow cut-through traffic, and is designed perhaps to be able to go underwater. Situations like this currently exist in some of the reservoirs, right? Those could be considered like a park road, but they are not necessarily used as a park road, and so that's something in our plans that we're going to have to take a look at. And what is a way to get traffic moving around those areas when the next event happens that those facilities need to fill up with water as they're designed to do. So absolutely, flood control facilities will be part of the traffic plan. They have to be considered. This is an interesting question, and you touched on this earlier, Brian, about it's great to hear public input about the future, because obviously people are already thinking about the future, and this question speaks directly to that, about the future of what automobile traffic might look like. Electric powered vehicles are going to need places that they can recharge. Self-driving cars are going to need a very impressive network to be able to tie to so that those cars can talk to the other cars and be able to drive themselves and not hit other cars. All that is infrastructure that is going to have to be included in future transportation routes. What, if anything, might the county have already been planning? And Brian, perhaps you're the right person to answer this for the future. We're going to be probably seeing different modes of our current transportation, a drop in the overall number of combustion engine cars and a rise in the number of electric cars means that, how do you safely get those people off the roads and maybe to stations to charge? Are these things that have been discussed? Is the county aware of the kind of technology breakthroughs that are going to drive our transportation needs in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the impetus to do the Multimodal Thoroughfare plan is a response to recognizing, the changing mobility patterns that are facing our region and our country and our world, just across the board. The technology is tricky. There's a lot of it that's still being proven up, and we don't know exactly what form some of this might take, but I think it's safe to say with confidence that the future mobility network looks different than the past will. One of the studies that we're following to inform this effort is a study that TxDOT is undertaking called the SWIFT study, which is a slick acronym that I can't fully remember what it says, but we will get that to you in the formal response. But it is about the impacts of future transportation modes on the western part of Harris County and the western part of our region. So yes, absolutely, it's something we're aware of, something we're excited about, and something that we'll continue to plan toward in the future. John, you may have a couple other thoughts to add to that.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, this is an exciting time. Things are changing for those of us that had to go to the airport in these times. The days of everybody putting their car in a parking garage are kind of over. You look at all the rideshare companies that have sprung up and how that's changed. Transportation is changing, not just the multimodal component, but even how we are transported in individual vehicles is changing. So all that will be looked at. And do we have all the answers? No, but we will consider and evaluate what we know and what we think will happen.
And one of the things that I wanted to mention during my presentation earlier in this meeting that I forgot to mention was that we're aware that there are opportunities all across the county in existing subdivisions where a development may have a street that ends at a drainage ditch. And then there's another subdivision on the other side of that ditch that has a street that also ends at that ditch, and there's no connectivity between them. The reason that happens is that developers are not required to build the bridge over the county facility in many instances, and we end up with these dead ends with no connectivity. The neighborhoods have probably grown in the years since they were built, and perhaps that bridge does not need to be built, but a connection for pedestrians and bicycles could be a great idea and a way to merge neighborhoods together, make quicker access to neighborhood schools and such. And so we're also going to be identifying locations across the county where that's an opportunity. A narrow pedestrian bridge, something that could hold a bicycle or pedestrians, is a lot less expensive to build than a bridge for two-lane traffic to cross. And so those are opportunities where we can actually connect disconnected neighborhoods and do so relatively inexpensively to the benefit of all. And that's something that we are, in essence, going to be highlighting locations where that can happen. Same as we're highlighting locations where potentially railroad crossings could be closed in favor of fewer locations. Obviously, we want to minimize the number of places where cars and trains can interact. Any new locations, we have to work with the railroads on that right location, but also they usually want to have other locations closed when new locations are proposed. And so that is something that's contained in this plan. So again, the breadth of how many aspects of transportation are being studied is really impressive. And I'm very pleased that the county is looking at this level of its future planning. Here's a very interesting question. I think this speaks directly to the Vision Zero efforts. A question about removing the ability to turn right on red. A lot of times cars are, in essence, stopping in crosswalks and blocking sidewalks, and either the driver is turned the other direction looking for oncoming traffic from another car, and they're missing the traffic coming to their right that may be a pedestrian or a bicycle. And I think this speaks directly to the Vision Zero effort. John, is there anything at the county level that's already been discussed about that kind of turning movement?
Well, yeah, what I'll tell you in Vision Zero, which is a completely different approach at looking at traffic fatalities, we're evaluating every fatality and why it happened and every serious injury. So, and then we'll develop high injury networks in areas that can be addressed from a infrastructure improvement, but we'll also collect data, for example, like that says, hey, well, now maybe we need to look at changing the law or doing something of that nature. You know, when we first got in this Vision Zero business, we get a database from TxDOT of the number of injuries and deaths. And in particular, deaths didn't match what the county medical examiner had. So we had to go figure out what happened there. And we finally found what happened. I don't remember the exact percent, but it was close to a 10% difference. There were more deaths that the county medical examiner had reported than were being reported by the state. So we've had to go back and look at the data. We have somebody analyzing all the data, putting this together. And for the person to ask this question, you should look at our Vision Zero presentation and hopefully join us the next time we have a call like this.
Yeah, great. I agree totally. I think that we are coming to the end of our questions. We'll give everybody one last opportunity to use the Q&A feature and ask us a question. But while we're waiting to see if there are any final questions this evening, is there anything that my team would like to add to our talking points this evening, either Truman or Patty?
Good job, Chris. Good job, Brian and John. Thank you for your time, community.
I want to thank everybody as well. Look forward to more input so we can make this the best that our community can have.
Agreed, totally agree. John and Brian, your team, any final comments that y'all would like to make tonight?
Well, I want to thank everybody for attending because it's your input that helps us develop a better plan. And you know, as Commissioner Garcia alluded, he's a walker, runner occasionally, as he said, and a bicyclist. And we have other court members who are the same thing. So they too want the same thing that you do. We want safe, multimodal transportation, and your input's so important. We appreciate it.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what John and Truman and Patty and others said, great job, Chris. Really appreciate your team's work pulling this together, and all of my colleagues in the engineering department for making this happen. And most of all, thanks to the community, and just keep in mind that this is the first time we've spoken. We hope it's not the last. When you have the opportunity to pass the word around about the next public meeting, I hope you'll encourage your neighbors, your family, your friends to show up and let us know what their questions or thoughts are for their specific communities. So I hope everyone has a safe holiday season, and look forward to carrying this across the finish line early next year.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. And I do think with that, we will end tonight's meeting. I, too, want to thank everyone for attending. You can find out about future public meetings at the web address eng.hctx.net/HarrisCTP. And a copy of tonight's presentation will also be available in Spanish online. You can continue to ask questions of the project team on any of tonight's topics or any of the other transportation meetings at the email address harrisctp@eng.hctx.net. And once again, the next transportation plan meeting will be held on December 8th, and that will be the Equity in Transportation Plan. Once again, I can't thank everyone enough for taking the time out of your evening to join us for this presentation, and we do look forward to interacting with you in the future and getting down to that neighborhood level and making sure that we can make the best possible plan for all of Harris County's residents. Thank you very much. This closes our meeting for the evening.